Start on this topic of the intellects of genius in the modern world. It helps to recognize who they are, and that they're listed here on page 50, almost at the end of the reading. They are Isaac Newton, we all know, Francis Bacon, another early theorist of modern science, and Descartes himself. As much as Rousseau's argument points in opposite directions to Descartes' own, Rousseau recognized Descartes as not part of the problem, not a sham scientist, but a man of real genius who did actually advance human knowledge. So how should we think about them? Well, they are very rare types. There just aren't that many of them. And they have had the unfortunate effect of taking away the natural barrier to knowledge. Now, Rousseau has a kind of understanding that we see in our fantasy stories still, in our myths and legends, that great power is often guarded by some kind of test. The hero of a fantasy story has to face a test of wisdom and courage and perseverance before he or she can get at the secrets and the really dangerous things. The Lord of the Rings story have these elements. Not just anyone can be permitted to be in possession of the ring, and terrible things happen when it goes to the wrong people. So Rousseau imagines something like this, that the natural difficulty of the sciences was a kind of guard or test like that. It was like, from the King Arthur legends, the sword and the stone. Not just anybody could pull out the sword and be king, but Arthur, because of his qualities, could do that. The problem with ordinary scientists is that they've made it easy for the rest of us. You think about Darwin, of course, he came after Rousseau, so Rousseau couldn't think about Darwin himself. But what's the difficulty? Perhaps the difficulty is not that what Darwin says was false, but that the trial that Darwin himself had to go through to get that knowledge is no longer necessary for the rest of us. We can get immediate access to the worst implications of what Darwin thought. It can reduce our reverence and our awe. Darwin couldn't do that himself. He had to demonstrate that his commitment to wisdom by years and years of careful science and careful labor. He had to show some kind of reverence for nature and its creations in order to stick to his project for long enough to produce the wisdom that has destroyed that reverence for the sanctity of life and the miracle of life, the creation of life for the rest of us. So that's the danger. But what should we do about those few people of genius? As always, Rousseau doesn't say, well, it's not that they're wrong, it's that they have a bad effect. So the first thing we should do is recognize how rare those people are, and how much better it would be if the arts and sciences were left to the few people of genius and the rest of us stayed on the outside. Here's a simple argument. That in the modern world you will be drawn perhaps to the arts and the sciences, and your education will point you in that way, get you started and make you believe that you could do it. But is it in fact true? You certainly can dedicate your life to it and become a certain thing, but perhaps you will show no real genius for it, just a kind of borrowed talent. And wouldn't it be better to take up some useful profession of the kind that is disrespected in the modern world and not generally honored, but actually does good for people? So the first thing to understand about the few intellects of genius is that you should know how few there are. You should remember how few there are. And we should all keep to our places, the vast majority of us, not meddling with the advances in the arts and sciences, and leaving that to the few people who can really do it well. And Descartes' argument takes a turn. This paragraph on page 50 is one of the few that Rousseau gives us with a complex message. It changes its topic through the course of its argument. That he begins to consider what should be the relationship between the few powerful people, wealthy and powerful people who actually control the world, and those few people who are intellects of genius. Well, it would be good if the intellects of genius were not put out into the world of common people to earn a kind of living by instructing them, and that instruction, that education would amount to taking away the natural safeguards against the dangers of science. They should, in fact, be among the powerful, and they should work with them and advise them. It would be better if the great and powerful would give safety and independence to the people who had the real scientific vocation so that they could practice their profession. And then the good result of this, here now on the last page, would be that the examples of true wisdom would inspire the rich and the powerful to do truly great deeds, to be magnanimous. One of those virtues from the very short list of virtues that Rousseau is willing to think are serious. The true genius intellects, with their selfless dedication to knowledge, would inspire the powerful people. And the rest of us, the common people, would be outside and therefore not be distracted toward doing things that we can't do well, and therefore not distracted from what is really our duty. So the rest of us, let's not make ourselves crazy trying to do things that nature hasn't fit us out to do. We shouldn't accept the standards imposed by a scientific culture, which would make us trying to perfect our talents so that other people would think well of us. But we should keep to our places, if that means manufacturing tiles or doing some other low but useful profession. That would be the best thing. We shouldn't try to distract other people from knowing their duties, but we should worry very much about fulfilling duties of our own. And this will bring us finally to the last paragraph that I've discussed before. But if we look to the end of it, we see that he uses the Sparta and Athens as a common reference point between Rousseau and the academy that he is appealing to. Just a classic reference that we should understand that there's a division of labor, that Athens is in fact a great place, but a very small place because only a few people are intellects of genius who deserve to live there and can live well there. They are the city of the people who knew how to speak well, how to write truly useful and enlightening books, how to make advances in the arts and sciences. And we should recognize that a few people belong in that Athenian world, but the rest of us belong over here in Sparta and should strive to show more Spartan virtues. Not to speak well, but to do well. That is, to fulfill our duties rather than to live in the abstract universe of pure knowledge. There will be some famous people who can live in the Republic of Letters, that is the Athenian world. But we should keep them restricted to the people who really deserve that, and to recognize that for almost all of us, we belong in the lower and more virtuous and more useful city.